Before the grass could grow on my wife's grave, my stepdaughter, the girl I once loved as my own flesh and blood, threw a forged will in my face and smiled coldly. The happy family act is over. Old man, welcome to the psychiatric hospital. I simply smiled back, because what they didn't know was that before my wife passed away, she had whispered a secret in my ear, a secret powerful enough to send every single one of them to prison. I appreciate you stopping by. Comment below, what would you do if your closest family turned against you? I'm curious about your perspective. A gentle note, this story contains fictionalized elements created for entertainment and teaching moments. Similarities to actual individuals or settings are purely by chance, though the message carries weight. I stood at my wife's graveside, 62 years old, 32 years, building an empire watching 200 people pretend to mourn Margaret. She'd been gone for 3 days. 3 days since she whispered the secret that would either save me or destroy everything. The July sun beat down on the Ashford family mausoleum in Maplewood Springs. Heat shimmered off white marble, and the wind carried the scent of roses, Margaret's favorite. I'd ordered 300 of them. Warren. Her voice had been barely a breath 3 nights ago. The journal, behind the mirror, in the safe. Password is, your birthday. Save Dane. Promise me. Save Dane. I'd promised. What else could I do? I didn't know then that those words would be my only weapon against what was coming. Claudia stood across from me, dabbing at dry eyes with a black handkerchief. My stepdaughter, the girl I'd raised since she was 10, wore a black Chanel dress and carried a fire engine red Hermes bag. She caught me looking and offered a sad smile that didn't reach her eyes. Brandon Hayes stood beside her, one hand on her shoulder. My son-in-law was 38, lean and sharp-featured with cold blue eyes that belonged on a shark. He'd been part of our family for 12 years. I'd never trusted him. Turns out I should have trusted my instincts. 6-year-old Dane sat between them, small and confused in his tiny black suit. My grandson kept looking at the casket, then at me like he was trying to understand why Grandma wouldn't wake up. I wanted to go to him, hold him, tell him everything would be okay. But Claudia's hand tightened on his shoulder every time he shifted toward me, keeping him controlled. The pastor droned on about eternal rest and God's mercy. My mind was 3 nights back in that hospital room. The journal, Margaret had repeated, her eyes urgent. Everything you need to protect yourself. And Dane, don't let them take him to that place. What place? I'd whispered. With Thornhill, how she'd breathed. They'll try. Thornhill. And then she was gone. The service ended around 4:30. People filed past offering scripted condolences. Business associates. Board members from Ashford Pharmaceuticals, all performing appropriate rituals of grief. Gerald Foster, our board chairman, shook my hand. Over his shoulder, I saw Brandon lean in close to Gerald, whispering something that made the older man's eyes flick to me and away again. My stomach tightened. Helen Crawford, our housekeeper of 20 years, approached with red-rimmed eyes, the only genuine tears I'd seen all day. Walter Thompson, the gardener, stood nearby with his hat in his hands. She loved those roses, sir. These people were real, loyal. Everything Claudia and Brandon weren't. The limousine ride back to the manor was when the mask finally came off. Claudia waited until we'd cleared the cemetery gates before pulling out a folder. She set it on the leather seat between us with a soft thump that sounded like a gavel. "What's this?" I asked. "Mom's will. She updated it 6 months ago, right before she got sick." Funny timing, don't you think? Brandon watched me with those shark eyes from across the seat. Dane was in the front with the driver, thank God. I opened the folder. Bukata, being of sound mind and body. Revoke all previous wills. Claudia Margaret Grant as sole beneficiary. Controlling interest in Ashford Pharmaceuticals. Ashford Manor and all properties. My hands didn't shake. I wouldn't give them that satisfaction. Margaret would never. Wouldn't she? Claudia leaned back. Come on, Warren. Mom was tired of playing second fiddle to your precious company. She wanted security for her daughter, her real family. The knife twisted. Her daughter. Not our family. This isn't legal, I said quietly. Desiksu, the show's over, old man. Now we're going to transfer control of Ashford Pharmaceuticals to people who actually know how to run it. Brandon finally spoke. We have an appointment at the lawyer's office Thursday morning, 9 a.m. sharp. You'll sign the papers transferring your shares to Claudia. And if I refuse, Claudia's smile was all teeth. Then we proceed with Plan B. Dr. Patricia Hale at Thornhill Psychiatric Hospital has already reviewed your file, the one Mom helped us prepare. Early onset dementia, erratic behavior, confusion. All documented, all witnessed. She studied me like a lab specimen. Do you know how easy it is to have someone declared incompetent when they're 62 and grieving? Thornhill is lovely, Brandon added. Private rooms, round-the-clock care. No visitors unless we approve them. For your own protection. My heart hammered, but I kept my face blank. I see, I said finally. I'm glad you're being reasonable. Claudia patted my hand like I was a child. Sign the papers Thursday. Transfer everything nice and clean. Fight us, and you'll spend those days drooling in a padded room while we sell off your company piece by piece. The limousine pulled through the gates of Ashford Manor. Claudia gathered her folder. 60 hours, Warren. That's how long you have to make the right choice. She stepped out, Brandon following. They walked up the marble steps like they already owned the place. I sat in the empty limousine for a long time, staring at the folder. The fake will forged with Margaret's name in handwriting that was close but not quite right. But it would fool a judge who wasn't looking closely. The journal, Margaret had whispered. Everything you need. She'd known what Claudia and Brandon were planning, and she'd left me a weapon, behind the mirror, in the safe. Password my birthday, 60 hours. Thursday at 9 a.m. The countdown had started. I looked up at Ashford Manor at Margaret's bedroom window on the second floor. Somewhere in that room was a journal. Evidence. Truth. The driver cleared his throat. Mr. Ashford, are you ready to go inside? I folded the fake will and tucked it into my jacket pocket. Not yet, I said quietly. Not yet, but soon. Very soon, Claudia and Brandon were going to learn that the old man they'd underestimated had one last fight left in him. I'd barely stepped through the mahogany doors when Claudia clapped her hands together like a socialite hosting a garden party. Everyone please come in. We have refreshments set up in the east parlor. Mom would have wanted us to celebrate her life, not mourn it. Celebrate. The word tasted like ash. I watched her work the room, air-kissing cheeks and accepting condolences with practiced grace. Brandon stood near the fireplace, phone pressed to his ear, already conducting business. Gerald Foster lingered by the bar, watching me with calculating eyes. Nobody looked at me like I mattered anymore. I was a ghost in my own home. I made my way toward the grand staircase, moving slowly, deliberately. Let them see what they expected, an old man, exhausted by grief, shuffling toward his bedroom. My hand trembled slightly on the banister. Warren! Brandon's voice stopped me 3 steps up. Going somewhere? My room, I said, letting my voice crack. It's been a long day. Of course. He smiled coldly. Just remember we have security monitoring the house now. For your safety. Security, that's what he was calling it. I continued up the stairs, feeling his gaze follow me. At the top, I walked down the east corridor toward Margaret's room. The door was already open. Margaret's bedroom looked ransacked. Boxes stacked against the wall. Her closet, empty designer dresses already packed away. The vanity stripped bare. They'd moved fast. Too fast. I walked to the far wall where a gilt-framed mirror hung above a small writing desk, where Margaret wrote thank you notes every Sunday morning. Behind the mirror, she'd whispered, in the safe. I lifted the mirror off its hooks. Behind it, nothing. Just plain white plaster. No safe, no hidden compartment. My heart sank. I ran my fingers over the wall, pressing, searching. Nothing. Had Margaret been delirious? Number. She'd been clear. Urgent. I moved to the other side of the room, checking behind paintings, decorative shelves. Still nothing. And then I saw it. On the writing desk, a small indentation in the dust rectangular about the size of a book. Something had been there recently. The journal. Margaret's leather-bound diary, the one she'd written in every night. I'd seen it 1,000 times. It had been here, and now it wasn't. Looking for something, I spun around. Claudia stood in the doorway, arms crossed, that cold smile playing at her lips. I thought, Margaret's things? I let the sentence trail off, shoulders slumping. Already packed. She walked into the room. We're donating most of it. She studied me for a long moment, dissecting me piece by piece. You should rest, she said finally. Brandon's arranged for your dinner to be brought up. You don't need to come back downstairs tonight. I don't... No. She paused at the door. Oh, and Warren. We've made a few staffing changes. Had to trim some fat. My stomach dropped. What kind of changes? I found out 20 minutes later. Helen Crawford sat in the kitchen, a white envelope in her trembling hands, tears streaming down her face. Walter Thompson stood beside her, his gardening hat crushed between his fists. 18 years, Helen whispered. 18 years, and they give me $500 and tell me to be out by tomorrow morning. $500 for nearly 2 decades of loyalty. Walter? My voice sounded hollow. Same, sir. Miss Claudia said they're bringing in a professional landscaping company. He looked up, hurt cutting deep. 30 years I've tended these grounds. I'm sorry, I said and meant it. I'm so sorry. Helen hugged me before she left. If you need anything at all, you call me. You're not alone. When the kitchen door closed behind them, I stood alone in the empty space, all of it gone. Dinner arrived at 7:30. Brought by someone I didn't recognize, a stern-faced woman who set the tray down without a word and left immediately, locking the door behind her with an audible click. I stared at the lock for a long moment. This was a preview, a warning. Sign the papers, or this becomes your life. Locked in your room, fed like a prisoner. Isolated, controlled. I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out the burner phone I'd bought 3 months ago, back when Margaret first got sick and started acting strange. Secretive, paranoid. Now I knew she'd been trying to protect me. The journal was gone. But Margaret had said everything I needed was in that journal, which meant whoever had it now had evidence, had proof. I typed a message to the only person I could trust, need to talk. Urgent. Tomorrow, 2 a.m. service entrance. Isaac Warren would understand. Around 9 p.m. footsteps echoed outside my door. Claudia's voice. Make sure he doesn't leave the room tonight. Doctor's orders. So they'd posted a guard. I sat on the edge of my bed and let my shoulders slump. Through the door, I knew they were watching, listening. So I gave them what they wanted. Old, weak, defeated. That's what they needed to believe. But tomorrow night at 2 a.m., while they slept in their stolen beds, I'd prove them wrong. I lay in bed, listening to the house settle. Somewhere below, Claudia's voice drifted up. By Thursday, he'll sign everything. And if he doesn't, we move to Plan B. Patricia already has the paperwork ready at Thornhill. Brandon's response was too quiet to hear. But Claudia's laugh was crystal clear. I closed my eyes and thought about Margaret's final moments, desperate to save Dane. Don't let them take him to that place, she'd begged. I wouldn't. I'd made a promise, and Warren Ashford had never broken a promise in his life. The countdown continued 54 hours until Thursday 9 a.m., but I had 48 hours to find the truth, and I'd only need 1 to destroy them. At 2 a.m. Sunday morning, I moved through the darkened house like a thief in my own home. The guard outside my door was slumped in his chair, snoring softly. Amateur hour. The service entrance lock disengaged with a soft click, and Isaac Warren slipped inside. At 32, Isaac was everything I'd hoped he'd become when I'd hired him 8 years ago. Sharp eyes, sharper mind, and loyalty you couldn't buy. Mr. Ashford. He stopped staring at me in the dim light. You're standing straight. I am. I gestured toward my study. Come on, we don't have much time. We settled into the leather chairs, and I watched Isaac process what he was seeing. Gone was the shuffling, trembling old man from the funeral. You've been faking it, Isaac said slowly. The confusion, the weakness. All of it, I leaned forward. They're watching me, Isaac, Claudia and Brandon. They've got a doctor at Thornhill Psychiatric Hospital ready to declare me incompetent if I don't sign over my company by Thursday morning. His jaw tightened. That's illegal. Well, Margaret warned me before she died. About a journal about protecting Dane about Thornhill. She knew what they were going to do. But the journal's gone. Claudia took it. Isaac was quiet for a moment, thinking. Finally he said, there might be something. 3 weeks ago, Isaac began pulling out his phone. I noticed unusual activity in the company accounts. Small transfers, a few thousand here and there. But the pattern was wrong. My stomach tightened. How much? Then over the past 18 months, almost $4.7 million has been siphoned out. Pension fund, research and development, even the employee healthcare fund, $4.7 million. Who authorized the transfers? Isaac's expression darkened. According to the digital signatures, you did. What? Every transaction has your electronic signature. But I know you didn't do it. I've been your assistant for 8 years. These signatures are professional forgeries, but they're not yours. Brandon, I said quietly. He has access to my office. That's what I thought. So I started watching him. Isaac lowered his voice. Mr. Ashford, your son-in-law is in serious trouble. He's got debts. Bad debts. Isaac pulled up photographs on his phone. Brandon Hayes standing in a parking garage talking to a hard-featured man in an expensive suit. Anthony Russo. He's a loan shark. High-end clientele, discreet services, absolutely ruthless. Isaac tapped his phone. I got him on his cell phone. He called Russo from his car afterward. Brandon's voice filled the small study. I told you I need until Thursday. Just give me until Thursday. You've been saying that for 3 months, Hayes. My patience has limits. I know. But this is it. The old man's about to sign everything over the company, the trust fund, all of it. $75 million. Once I have control, you'll get your 4.7 plus interest. I'll throw in an extra $1 million for your trouble. You better not be lying to me. I'm not. Thursday morning, 9 a.m. By Friday, you'll have your money. You have my word. Your word isn't worth much, but fine. Thursday. If you don't deliver, we're done being civilized. Understand? Isaac stopped the recording. I sat back, the pieces clicking into place with nauseating clarity. Brandon wasn't after Ashford Pharmaceuticals to run it. He wanted the money. Needed it. $4.7 million in gambling debts to a loan shark who'd probably kill him if he didn't pay up. He's been embezzling to cover his losses, I said slowly. But it's not enough. He needs the whole trust fund to pay Russo off. If he gets control, he'll strip everything, Isaac said. Sell the patents, fire the staff, gut the pension fund. 420 people will be out of work with nothing. I thought of the employees I knew by name. All of them would be collateral damage in Brandon's escape plan. We need proof, I said. Legal, court admissible proof. I know. Isaac hesitated. There's only one place that has everything we need. Transaction logs, digital signature metadata, the original files before they were doctored, the company servers. Yes, sir. Meridian Tower, 28th floor. Locked server room biometric access. I can get in, I have the clearances, but if anyone's monitoring the logs, they'll know. Can you do it without being detected? Isaac considered. Maybe. If I go in around 2 or 3 a.m. Monday night, claim I'm troubleshooting a network issue, I'd have maybe 20 minutes. 20 minutes, it wasn't much, but it might be enough. There's something else, Isaac said quietly. About Dane. They don't treat him like family. He's a prop. A tool. The way Brandon looks at him sometimes. He shook his head. Like he's in the way. Margaret's whisper echoed, "Save Dane, promise me." "Hey, we're going to stop them," I said. "We're going to get the evidence exposing what they've done and make sure Dane never ends up as a pawn in their game." "What do you need me to do?" "Monday night, 2 a.m., break into the server room. Get me transaction logs, signature metadata emails, anything that proves Brandon's been embezzling and forging my authorization. And if I get caught, you won't." I paused. "But Isaac, if something goes wrong, I'll take the fall." "Understood." He smiled. "With respect, sir, I'm not letting you take the fall for anything. We're in this together." Isaac slipped out at 2:45 a.m., disappearing into the darkness. I sat by the window and watched the sky lighten, thinking about the boy I'd met 8 years ago. His father had worked for me, a brilliant chemist diagnosed with cancer, when Isaac was in high school. I'd paid for the treatments. Experimental, expensive, ultimately unsuccessful. Isaac had never forgotten. He was the son I'd never had, and together we were going to take back everything they'd tried to steal. The countdown continued 48 hours until Thursday 9 a.m., but Monday night at 2 a.m. we'd strike the first real blow, and by the time they realized what had happened, it would be too late to stop us. The server room was hidden behind a false panel in the library, a secret I'd built into this house 30 years ago. Ironic that the security measure I'd installed to safeguard my empire would now expose the people trying to steal it. It was 1 a.m. Monday morning, when Isaac and I stood in the darkened library. I'd waited until Kurt Schneider's snoring resumed before slipping downstairs. I reached behind a leather-bound volume and pressed the hidden latch. The shelf swung outward, revealing a steel door with a biometric scanner. Isaac's eyes widened. "You have a server room in your house." I corrected, placing my palm against the scanner. When Ashford Pharmaceuticals was starting out, I worked from home. Needed secure storage for research data, patent applications, financial records. The door clicked open. "I haven't used it in 15 years, but the system's still active. Does Claudia know about it?" "No. I built it before Margaret and I married." The temperature dropped as we stepped inside. Isaac set his laptop on the workstation desk and plugged into the network. His fingers flew across the keyboard. "How long?" I asked quietly. 20 minutes to access the company mainframe remotely. Another 10 to download everything we need." He glanced up. "But it'll leave a trail. They'll think it came from me. Let them think I'm confused accessing files in the middle of the night." The files appeared on Isaac's screen like damning evidence. Transaction logs, wire transfers, digital signatures. Brandon Hayes had been systematically embezzling from Ashford Pharmaceuticals for 18 months. "Look at this," Isaac murmured. "It starts small. $5,000 here, $8,000 there. March of last year." I leaned closer. The early transfers were subtle amounts, small enough to get lost in monthly reconciliation. But as months progressed, Brandon had gotten bolder, or more desperate. By September, he's moving 50,000 at a time. December, Isaac paused. $350,000, withdrawn from the employee pension fund. My jaw clenched. The pension fund. 420 employees' retirement money. Isaac pulled up another file. "But here's the smoking gun. Digital signatures. My digital signatures supposedly authorizing every fraudulent transfer. Except they weren't mine." Isaac zoomed in on the metadata. Every signature was created on the same laptop. Serial number BH2847. That's Brandon's company-issued computer. Look at the timestamps most signed between 2 and 3 a.m. He thought he was being careful. He was, just not careful enough. We were downloading the final batch of files when I heard it. Footsteps in the library. Isaac's head snapped up. We locked eyes. The footsteps stopped just outside the hidden door. Then a knock. Brandon's voice drifted through. "I know someone's in there. The network monitoring system sent me an alert." My heart hammered. Isaac's hand hovered over the laptop. I shook my head. "Wait, I'm coming out," I called, making my voice shake, confused, frightened. I didn't mean to. I opened the door and stepped out, leaving Isaac hidden behind me. Brandon stood in pajamas, a tablet showing a network monitoring interface. His eyes were sharp, suspicious. "Warren, it's 1:30 in the morning. What are you doing in the server room?" I let my shoulders slump, my hands tremble. I was looking for... I glanced around, like seeing the library for the first time. "Where's the bathroom?" "The bathroom is upstairs, in your bedroom, where you're supposed to be." Brandon stepped closer. "How did you even know about this room?" "Margaret," I said, the name catching. "Margaret told me. She said there were files, important files." His expression shifted, calculating. "What files?" "I don't remember." I rubbed my face. I woke up and I thought she was calling me. "But she's not here, is she?" I looked at him with watery eyes. "Where's Margaret?" For a long moment, Brandon said nothing, weighing possibilities. He wanted to believe I was broken, weak, no threat. So that's what I gave him. "Margaret died and Warren," Brandon said slowly, like speaking to a child. 3 days ago. "Don't you remember?" I stared at him, then down at my hands. "She died." "Yes, we had the funeral. You were there." I swayed, grabbing the bookshelf. "I need to sit down." Brandon's expression softened, not with sympathy, but with satisfaction. This was exactly what he wanted to see. "Come on," he said, taking my arm with false gentleness. "Let's get you back to bed." He guided me upstairs and deposited me in my bedroom like a confused child. "Stay in bed, Warren," he said firmly. "If you need something, press the call button." "Okay," I mumbled. "I'm sorry, I miss her." "I know, now sleep." He closed the door. I waited until his footsteps faded. Then I counted to 100. Then I moved to the window and flashed the small LED light 3 times. The signal. 2 minutes later, a responding flash from the rose garden. Isaac had made it out, laptop and evidence in hand. I sat on the edge of my bed and allowed myself a smile in the darkness. Brandon had bought the performance completely. He had no idea that while he'd been playing concerned son-in-law, Isaac had finished the download. Every transaction, every forged signature, every email, every piece of evidence we'd need. I pulled out the burner phone and found Isaac's text. "Got everything." He didn't see me. "You were brilliant." I typed back, "Good. Now we have exactly what we need. What's the plan?" "We give them what they want. Or at least we make them think we're going to. You're going to sign. I'm going to show up. And when they're comfortable, when they think they've won, that's when we show them exactly who they've been underestimating. Checkmate. Checkmate." But there was still one piece missing. Margaret's journal. She'd mentioned it specifically. But the journal was gone from her room, unless the safe she'd mentioned with the password of my birthday wasn't in the obvious place. "Behind the mirror," she'd said. I checked the obvious mirror in her bedroom. Found nothing. But Margaret had been clever. If she'd wanted to hide something from Claudia, she wouldn't have put it somewhere her daughter might discover it. She'd put it somewhere only I would think to look. Somewhere that meant something to the two of us. The countdown continued 36 hours until Thursday 9 a.m. But now I had evidence. I had Isaac. I had a plan. Tomorrow I'd find Margaret's journal. Tonight I'd let them think they'd won. I lay back and smiled in the darkness. Soon, Margaret, I whispered. Soon I'll finish what you started. By Tuesday morning I had become invisible in my own home. The transformation was deliberate. I stopped combing my hair, wore the same wrinkled shirt 2 days in a row, paired with mismatched socks. I shuffled when I walked. Let my hands shake when people were watching. I became exactly what they wanted to see, a broken old man defeated by grief and age. Breakfast arrived at 7:30, flavorless oatmeal, lukewarm coffee, dry toast. I ate it staring out the window. From my vantage point, I could see the dining room. Through the glass, Claudia and Brandon sat eating steak and eggs, fresh fruit pastries. The contrast wasn't subtle. It was a message. I chewed my tasteless oatmeal and smiled. Around 9 a.m., I heard Dane's laugh from the garden. There he was, 6 years old, in his little blue jacket, chasing a butterfly through the rose beds. His dark hair caught the sunlight. "Save Dane, my ma," Margaret had begged. Dane looked up suddenly and waved. "Grandpa, Grandpa," I waved back, throat tight. He started running toward the house, and I turned for my door. I nearly collided with Kurt Schneider. "Where are you going, Mr. Ashford?" "The garden. I wanted to see my grandson." "Doctor's orders. You're supposed to stay in your room." Kurt's expression didn't change. Ms. Grant was very clear. "But Dane is fine. You need to stay here for your own health." Kurt stepped forward, forcing me back. "No visitors, no exceptions." The threat was clear. "Comply or we'll drug you." I let my shoulders slump. "Okay, I'll stay here." The door closed. The lock clicked. Around 11 a.m., I heard Brandon's voice. "I told you I need until Thursday, just 2 more days." Anthony Russo, the loan shark. I pressed my ear against the heating vent. Brandon's voice drifted up. "No, she doesn't know how bad it is." I kept the Macau losses separate. If Claudia found out I lost another $2 million. He trailed off. The kid's not my problem. Claudia can deal with him. I'll be halfway to São Paulo by then. My hands curled into fists. He was planning to abandon them all. Take the money and disappear. Around 2 p.m., Claudia came to my room. She carried the same folder from the limousine. "We need to talk," she said, setting it on my desk. I was sitting by the window, playing the part. I didn't turn around. "Warren, look at me when I'm talking to you." I turned, slowly blinking. "Claudia, we need to go over these papers." "I don't want to sign anything." Her smile was razor thin. "That's not really an option. Brandon found you confused at 1:30 a.m. Do you know how easy it would be to have you declared incompetent? You can't do that." "I absolutely can." She opened the folder. "Sign these papers and you can stay here. Refuse and you're going to Thornhill." I stared at her, this woman I'd raised for 25 years. "I loved you," I said quietly, like my own daughter. Something flickered across her face. Then it was gone. "Every time I called you Dad," she said, voice dropping to something venomous. I wanted to throw up. "My mother married for money. You were just the ATM that kept the lights on." The words hit like blows. She pulled out a pen. "Sign. Or Thursday morning you're going to Thornhill, and you'll never see Dane again." "Where is Dane now?" "Upstairs, napping. Why?" "I want to see him, before I decide." She studied me, then smiled cruelly. "No, you don't get to see him until you sign." She moved toward the door. "You have until Thursday, 9 a.m., the lawyer's office or the hospital. Your choice." She left, leaving the folder and pen. I sat there for 10 minutes. Then I stood up, walked to the desk, and put pen to paper. I drew a single shaky line. Not my signature. Just a wavering mark. Claudia returned 5 minutes later. She saw the ruined document and her face went red. "What is this?" I blinked at her, confused. You said to sign. I said, sign your name. I was trying. I couldn't remember. She crumpled the paper and threw it at me. Fine. We'll do this Thursday at the board meeting. Arthur Caldwell can witness your signature. I'm sorry, I miss Margaret. Thursday, she said coldly. 9 a.m., Meridian Tower. Be ready or we'll have you committed by noon. She stormed out. The moment she was gone, I moved to the window. I saw Brandon slipping into Margaret's room with a large duffel bag. He was searching for something. The journal. He didn't have it. Claudia didn't have it, which meant it still existed. I pulled out the burner phone. They don't have the journal. It's still hidden. Isaac's response where, and then I remembered, our 10th anniversary. Margaret had commissioned a custom mirror for her sitting room, her private space. Antique. Gold-leafed. It had hung above the settee where she'd read every evening. I know where it is. I'll get it tonight. Be careful. Always am. 36 hours until Thursday. Tonight I'd find the journal. Thursday I'd end this. And Dane would be safe. I lay on my bed as the sun set. Downstairs I heard Claudia and Brandon arguing, muffled, angry, stressed. They were fracturing. Good. Let them tear each other apart. By the time they realized what was happening, I'd have already won. Margaret once told me that the best place to hide something was somewhere everyone had already looked. Now, at 3 a.m. Wednesday morning, 32 hours before the Thursday meeting, I finally understood. Kurt was snoring outside my door. I'd waited 2 hours, timing his patterns. Margaret's sitting room was at the end of the east wing. The door was unlocked. Why would they lock it? They'd already cleared out everything valuable, or so they thought. I slipped inside and closed the door softly. Moonlight filtered through the curtains. The furniture was still here, the Victorian settee, the writing desk, the bookshelf, and on the far wall hung the mirror, the antique gold-leafed mirror I'd given her for our 10th anniversary. She'd cried when she'd unwrapped it. It's perfect. I'll treasure it always. I lifted it carefully off its hooks. Behind it, nothing. Just smooth painted wall. My heart sank. Wait! I ran my fingers along the mounting bracket. There was a small seam. I pressed gently, and a section of wall clicked inward. Behind it, a wall safe with a digital keypad. Password is your birthday, Margaret had whispered. March 15th, 1964. 03151964. I typed it in with shaking fingers. The safe beeped, the lock disengaged. Inside was everything Margaret had promised. A leather-bound journal, a manila envelope thick with documents, a USB drive labeled WA, and a photograph. I pulled out the photo first. It showed a young boy, maybe 10, standing next to a middle-aged man in front of a laboratory building. I flipped it over. Brandon and Leonard Hayes, 2004. Patent filing day. Leonard Hayes, the pharmaceutical researcher I'd beaten in the Gamma-Tech 9 patent war 12 years ago. The man whose company had gone bankrupt after I'd proven his research was derivative. The man who'd taken his own life 6 months after the court ruling. Brandon was Leonard Hayes' son. I pulled out the manila envelope. Inside, property transfer documents all bearing Margaret's signature. Dates going back 8 years. The beach house, the investment properties, the vacation home in Aspen, all signed away piece by piece while I'd been too busy to notice. I picked up the journal and opened it. January 14th, 2010. Today I married Warren Ashford. I think I might actually love him. Standing there saying, I do, I felt something real. My vision blurred. I flipped forward, scanning entries. My March 2011. Watching Warren with Claudia and Brandon at Disney World. I think I made the right choice. December 2012. Dane was born today. Warren cried when he held him. I've never seen him show that kind of emotion. The tone shifted over time, less dreamy, more calculating. August 2014. Claudia asked me to sign some papers. Investment opportunities, she said. I signed without reading. I trust her. March 2016. I found out Claudia lied about the Malibu house. When I confronted her, she said I was confused. Did I agree to that? I can't remember. January 2018. I heard Claudia and Brandon talking. Claudia said, once the trust fund transfers, we can get rid of both of them. They wouldn't. They're family. June 2018. I'm scared. I found documents, plans to commit Warren to Thornhill. I confronted Claudia and she smiled. Mom, old women fall downstairs all the time. I don't recognize my daughter. My hands shook. October 2019. I've been hiding this journal for months. I gave them everything, and they've turned it into a weapon against the man I love. Because I do love him. March 2020. I'm sick. Cancer. Advanced. Maybe 6 months. Claudia cried, but I saw the calculation in her eyes. May 2020. I've been gathering evidence. Brandon's gambling debts, forged signatures, embezzlement. It's all on the USB. Password is Warren's birthday, backwards, 46151130. Warren. I'm sorry. I was weak, but please don't let them win. Save Dane. The final entry was written in red ink, July 24th, 2024. This is my last entry. Claudia came today. She held my hand and told me she loved me. All I could think was, I created this monster. Warren, if you're reading this, I loved you. Not at first, maybe, but somewhere along the way I fell in love with your kindness, your integrity. Use what I've left you. Stop them. Save Dane. Forgive me if you can. Margaret. Below P.S. Claudia doesn't know about the sitting room safe. She never liked this room. Am I? I sat on the floor, the journal clutched against my chest, and let the tears come. Margaret had loved me. Then she'd been manipulated. Then she'd tried to save me. I wiped my eyes and picked up the USB drive. Password 46151130. My birthday backwards. The files loaded. Financial records. Emails between Brandon and Anthony Russo. Photos of Brandon with loan sharks. Copies of forged documents. Medical records from a clinic in Switzerland. Dated 12 years ago. Patient Brandon Hayes. Diagnosis congenital bilateral absence of vas deferens. Status sterile. Prognosis permanent infertility. Brandon was sterile, which meant Dane wasn't Brandon's biological son, which meant the entire inheritance plan was based on a lie. I sat there as the pieces fell into place. Margaret had known. She'd documented everything, left me the tools to destroy them. I gathered everything and tucked it into my jacket. Then I replaced the mirror, making everything look undisturbed. Thursday morning, Claudia and Brandon expected me to show up defeated, ready to sign away my life's work. Instead, I was going to show up with evidence that would send them both to prison. And I was going to do it in front of the entire board of directors with witnesses in a way that would make it impossible for them to escape. Save Dane, Margaret had begged. I would, by destroying the people who'd used him as a pawn. As I slipped back into my room, I felt something I hadn't felt in days. Power. The power of truth. And truth was the most dangerous weapon of all. I spent the next 12 hours reading Margaret's journal from beginning to end. And with every page, I watched my marriage come back to life, and die again. It was 4:30 a.m. when I locked myself in my study. I sat in the leather chair Margaret had given me for my 60th birthday, opened the journal to page 1, and began to read. The early entries were almost painful in their sincerity. February 14th, 2010. Warren brought me roses today. He remembered from our third date. He remembers everything. He's 50 years old, successful beyond measure, and he treats me like I'm the most important thing in his world. I think I'm falling in love with him. Actually, truly falling in love. December 2010. Warren asked Claudia's permission to marry me. Asked her. This man cried because my daughter approved of him. How could I not love someone like that? I stopped reading, my throat tight. She had loved me. In those first years, Margaret had genuinely loved me. Then the shift came. Gradual, subtle. April 2014. Claudia suggested I start managing some household finances. I signed some papers today, consolidation documents, she called them. September 2014. Brandon took me to lunch. He said I should think about protecting Claudia's inheritance. Warren's not getting any younger. You need to make sure you're taken care of. I could see it happening entry by entry. Claudia and Brandon isolating Margaret, convincing her she was protecting herself, when really she was helping them build the framework for theft. Then in year 8, everything changed. June 2018. I found something today. An old newspaper article in Brandon's briefcase. Pharmaceutical researcher Leonard Hayes found dead, apparent suicide following patent dispute loss. Brandon is Leonard Hayes' son. The man Warren destroyed in that patent case. The man who took his own life because of Warren. And Brandon married Claudia 6 months after his father died. This wasn't chance. This was planned. Oh God, what have I helped them do? My hands shook so hard I had to set the journal down. To June 2018 continued. I confronted Brandon. He smiled and said, "Your husband destroyed my father. You really think I was going to let that go unanswered?" I asked what he planned to do. He said, "Take everything, just like Warren took everything from me." August 2018. Claudia cornered me today and said, "Mom, old women fall downstairs all the time. It would be tragic if something happened to you before you could say things you'd regret." Shaktutu. She was threatening me. My own daughter was threatening to kill me. I stood up abruptly, rage and grief warring in my chest. Margaret had known everything for 6 years and said nothing. Because she was afraid. Because she was protecting Claudia. I forced myself to keep reading. The entries from Margaret's final months were desperate and raw. On May 2024, diagnosis stage 4, pancreatic cancer. 6 months, maybe less. I always thought I'd have time. Now time has run out. May 2024 continued. I told Claudia about the cancer. She cried. But when she thought I wasn't looking, I saw her exchange a glance with Brandon. Relief. They're relieved I'm dying. June 2024. I started gathering evidence. Everything I could find. I'm hiding it all in the safe in my sitting room, the room Claudia hates. If something happens to me, at least Warren will have the evidence. July 24th, 2024. Last entry. Today, Warren held my hand and said, "You're the best thing that ever happened to me." I wanted to laugh or cry. The best thing, I'm the worst thing. But I didn't correct him. I just whispered the location of the safe. If you're reading this, Warren, I loved you. I did. In the beginning and at the end when it was too late. I betrayed you. I was weak and selfish. But please, use what I've left you. Stop them. Save Dane. He's innocent. Forgive me. Margaret. I closed the journal and sat in silence as the sun rose. Margaret was gone. What remained was this: a journal, a USB drive, and a choice. I chose action. I plugged the USB drive into my computer and opened the files. Transaction logs showed every fraudulent wire transfer. Metadata traced back to Brandon's laptop. Email correspondence between Brandon and Anthony Russo discussing payment schedules. More emails marked Operation Thornhill. On subject Phase 2 timeline. Thornhill admission scheduled. Dr. Patricia Hale has prepared the competency evaluation. Results predetermined. BH. They'd planned everything. But they'd underestimated Margaret's final rebellion. Then I found the photograph folder. 20 images of Brandon at various stages of his life. and one that froze my blood. Brandon, at 26, at a cemetery, holding a framed photograph of me with a red X drawn across my face. The caption beneath, "Found in Brandon's apartment, June 2018. He's been planning this since his father died. 12 years. Brandon had spent 12 years planning revenge for something I'd won legally, ethically. I closed the laptop and looked at the clock. 4 p.m. Wednesday, 17 hours until the Thursday morning board meeting. I couldn't just go to the police. That would take time. Brandon and Claudia would lawyer up. Number one, I needed something theatrical, decisive. I needed them to confess in front of witnesses they couldn't buy off. Tomorrow, when they expected to see a broken old man shuffle in and sign away his empire, they were going to see the real Warren Ashford. They wanted to burn down my empire. Fine. I'd burn it down first and rebuild it stronger than before. But them, they'd burn with it. I leaned back in my chair and let my mind drift to that year. The patent war. The case that had defined my career and apparently destroyed Leonard Hayes. 15 years ago, Leonard and I were both racing to patent Gamma-Tech 9, a revolutionary cancer treatment targeting gamma-aminobutyric acid receptors. The science was cutting edge, the market potential enormous. Whoever won the patent would control billions in revenue. Leonard's research was promising but flawed. He'd taken shortcuts in the clinical trials, manipulated data to show efficacy that wasn't consistently reproducible. When my legal team exposed those shortcuts in court, his patent application collapsed. Mine was airtight, peer-reviewed, replicated by independent labs. I won. Leonard's company, Hayes Biotech, went bankrupt within 6 months. Investors fled, employees lost their jobs, and Leonard couldn't handle the shame. I remembered getting the call about his death. Remembered feeling a strange mix of satisfaction and guilt. Satisfaction that I'd won, that my science had prevailed. Guilt that winning had cost a man his life. So I'd done what I thought was the decent thing. I'd sent flowers to the funeral. I'd established an anonymous trust fund for Leonard's son, $5,000 a year for education routed through a law firm so he'd never know it came from me. I'd thought I was being compassionate, merciful. I'd never imagined that boy would grow up to marry my stepdaughter and spend 15 years systematically destroying everything I'd built. Did you kill Leonard Hayes? The question hung in the dark study, spoken aloud to no one. Did I? The legal answer was no. I'd won a patent dispute fairly. Leonard's choices after that, his inability to cope, his decision to end his life, those were his choices. But the moral answer, I'd profited from his collapse. I'd built Ashford Pharmaceuticals into a powerhouse using the Gamma-Tech 9 patent that should have been his if he'd just done the work properly. I'd become wealthy beyond measure while his son grew up on scholarship programs and anonymous trust funds. In Brandon's story, I was absolutely the villain. Did that justify what he'd done? Stealing from my employees' pension fund, embezzling millions, using a 6-year-old child as a pawn. Planning to have me committed to a psychiatric hospital for the rest of my life. Whatever guilt I carried for Leonard Hayes' death, Brandon and Claudia had exceeded it tenfold. This wasn't justice. This was cruelty. I pulled out the burner phone and called Anthony Blake. The private investigator answered on the second ring. Mr. Ashford, I was wondering when you'd call. Anthony, I need everything you can find on Brandon Hayes. Born 1986, son of Leonard Hayes. I need to know when he met Claudia, how he approached her, every detail of his background between 2010 and now. The patent researcher's kid. Anthony's voice was thoughtful. I remember that case. Messy. I won fairly. Doesn't mean the kid sees it that way. I heard typing in the background. Give me 6 hours. If Brandon Hayes planned this for 15 years, there'll be a trail. Thank you. Warren. If this kid's been planning for 15 years, he's not sloppy. He's going to have contingencies. Be careful tomorrow. I hung up and stared at the photograph again. Brandon at 12 at his father's funeral, holding my picture with a target drawn on my face. Had he carried that photo for 15 years? Had he looked at it every night, feeding his rage, nurturing his revenge fantasy, until it became the driving purpose of his life? What a waste! My phone buzzed. A text from Isaac. Intercepted email from Brandon to Claudia. Sent 20 minutes ago. You need to see this. A screenshot appeared. Email header. Subject: tomorrow is Judgment Day. The body text was brief, almost poetic in its hatred. 15 years I've waited. 15 years of pretending to respect him, to care about his company, to be the good son-in-law. Tomorrow, Warren Ashford signs away everything that stolen patent built. Tomorrow, he's committed to Thornhill, locked away where he can't hurt anyone else. Tomorrow, Dad can finally rest in peace. The long game is over. We won, and I'm Buey. Claudia's reply, time-stamped 10 minutes later. About damn time. I'm tired of playing house with the old man. Let's finish this. See, I stared at those words for a long moment. The long game is over. We won. They had no idea. I typed a response to Isaac. Let him think that. Tomorrow he'll learn that revenge is a poison that kills the one who drinks it. Brandon hadn't married Claudia for love. He hadn't even married her for money, though that was certainly a benefit. He'd married her for access, to get close to me, to infiltrate my family, my company, my life. To position himself perfectly to destroy everything I'd built the way he believed I'd destroyed his father. It was brilliant in a twisted way. Patient, methodical, disciplined. He'd played the long game for 15 years, never breaking character, never revealing his true purpose, until now. Until Margaret's USB drive and her journal had exposed every detail of his plan. Another message from Isaac. Anthony Blake just sent preliminary report. Brandon met Claudia at a pharmaceutical conference in 2012, 6 months after Leonard died. Conference Warren hosted. Brandon used fake credentials to attend. First contact was intentional, planned. Of course it was. Lom also found this: Brandon visited Leonard's grave every year on the anniversary. Left flowers and a photo. Same photo every time: Warren's headshot with target drawn on it. 15 years. 15 years of visiting a grave, renewing his vow of vengeance, feeding his obsession. What a tragic, wasted life. I looked at the clock. 7:30 p.m., 14 and a half hours until the meeting. I picked up the photograph one last time. The 12-year-old boy at his father's funeral, target drawn on my face, promise of revenge written in the set of his jaw. I'm sorry for what you lost, I said quietly to that frozen image. But tomorrow you lose everything else. Then I filed it away, with the rest of the evidence, turned off the desk lamp, and went to prepare for war. The night before the board meeting, I did something I hadn't done in 40 years. I prayed. Not in a church. Not on my knees with folded hands like they taught us in Sunday school, but standing at the window of my study at 11 p.m., looking out over the grounds of Ashford Manor, watching the moonlight paint silver shadows across the rose garden. I wasn't sure who I was praying to. God, if he existed. Margaret, if she could hear me. The universe, if it cared about justice. Let me get this right, I thought. Let me save Dane. Let me protect the 420 people who depend on this company. And if there's a cost, let me be the one who pays it. The moon didn't answer. The roses swayed silently in the night breeze. But I felt something settle in my chest. Not peace exactly. More like readiness. Tomorrow everything would change. At 11:30 I called Charles Montgomery. Warren, I've been waiting for your call. It's happening tomorrow, I said. 9 a.m., Meridian Tower Conference Room B. They're expecting me to sign away everything, and instead, I'm going to destroy them. I sat down at my desk, spreading out the documents journal, USB drive photos, transaction logs. I have everything, Charles. Embezzlement, forgery, a 15-year conspiracy. Have you contacted the district attorney? Not yet. I wanted to talk to you first. I paused. And I need to know about Dane. If this goes the way I think it will, Claudia and Brandon will be arrested. What happens to him? Charles was quiet for a moment. I filed an emergency custody petition this afternoon. Judge Patricia Morrison is reviewing it. Given the circumstances, allegations of fraud, embezzlement, conspiracy to commit false imprisonment, she's likely to grant temporary custody to you pending a full hearing. But there's something you should know, he continued. If you go through with this, exposing them publicly, having them arrested in front of the board, it's going to be traumatic for Dane. He's 6 years old. He's going to see his mother taken away in handcuffs. I know. My throat tightened. But if I don't do this, he'll spend the rest of his childhood as a pawn in their schemes. Used, manipulated, taught that people are tools, not human beings worth loving. And then you're making the right choice. Hard, but right. At 1 a.m., I did something incredibly reckless. I left my room past Kurt Schneider, who was slumped in his chair, snoring softly, and walked down the hallway to Dane's room. Inside, lit by a nightlight shaped like a rocket ship, Dane slept peacefully in his small bed. His dark hair was tousled against the pillow. One arm thrown over a stuffed dinosaur, his face relaxed in that complete trust that only children possess. 6 years old. The age my father had been when his own father walked out and never came back. I knelt beside the bed, my knees protesting, but my heart overriding the discomfort. Unknown. I whispered, though I didn't wake him. Tomorrow is going to be hard. Your mom and Brandon are going to be taken away. You won't understand. You might hate me for it, but I'm doing this to protect you. He stirred slightly, his face scrunching up like he was having a dream. You deserve parents who see you as a child, I continued. Not as a tool, not as leverage or a pawn. You deserve to be loved for who you are, not what you represent. I reached out and gently brushed the hair from his forehead. I'm not your biological grandfather. I have no DNA connection to you. But if you'll let me, if when this is all over, you can forgive me for what I'm about to do, I'll be your grandfather by choice, and that's stronger than any DNA could ever be. Dane murmured something in his sleep. It sounded like, Grandpa Warren. My heart broke and healed in the same instant. I promise you, I whispered. Whatever happens tomorrow, I will keep you safe. That's my vow. At 3 a.m., my phone buzzed. A text from Anthony Blake. Final report complete. Sending now. Warren, be careful. This kid is more dangerous than you think. I opened the attachments. Photographs. Dozens of them. Brandon's personal archive obtained through means Anthony probably didn't want to explain. Brandon, at age 12 at his father's grave, holding my photo with the target drawn on it. Brandon, at age 16, in his bedroom walls covered with newspaper clippings about Ashford Pharmaceuticals. About me. Brandon, at age 20, sitting in a library surrounded by books on pharmaceutical law, patent litigation, corporate espionage. And then this one made my blood run cold. Brandon, at age 24, sitting in a cafe across from Meridian Tower. The timestamp, June 2012. 6 months before he'd coincidentally met Claudia at that pharmaceutical conference. He'd been watching, planning, positioning himself. A handwritten timeline in Brandon's neat script. Phase 1, meet C. Phase 2, marriage. Phase 3, gain access. Phase 4, Margaret cooperation. Phase 5, embezzlement. Phase 6, Thornhill. Phase 7, inheritance. Phase 8, disappear. We were currently at Phase 6. This wasn't just revenge. This was methodical, calculated destruction. The work of someone who'd spent half his life obsessing over a single goal. At 6 a.m., I showered and dressed. The navy suit fit perfectly. The tie knotted smoothly. I looked in the mirror and saw the man I'd been before grief and betrayal had tried to break me. At 7:30 a.m., I gathered my briefcase, checked my pocket for the USB drive one last time, and took a deep breath. Hargare, I said quietly to the empty room. I'm keeping my promise. I'm saving Dane, and I'm making sure the people who hurt you, who used you, face justice. Game on, I whispered. Then I walked out into the hallway, past a startled Kurt Schneider, who gaped at my transformation down the stairs, where Claudia and Brandon were eating breakfast, and froze when they saw me. Good morning, I said pleasantly, my voice strong and clear. Ready for the board meeting, I certainly am. Claudia's face went pale. Brandon's eyes narrowed with suspicion, but it was too late for them to change plans now. I smiled a real smile sharp as a knife and walked past them to the waiting car. The endgame had begun. Task 10. Thursday morning, I shuffled into the kitchen, wearing mismatched socks and a stained cardigan, smiling at Claudia with vacant eyes. I'm ready to sign, I said, my voice trembling. Let's just get this over with. The look of triumph on her face was almost worth the 3 days I'd spent pretending to be broken. I'd dressed carefully that morning. Not in the navy suit I'd laid out at 3 a.m. No, that suit was hidden in the back of my closet, waiting for the right moment. Instead, I wore my worst clothes. The cardigan with a hole in the elbow. Pants that didn't quite fit. One navy sock, one black sock. My hair deliberately uncombed, sticking up in gray tufts. I'd even forgotten to shave, leaving salt and pepper stubble across my jaw. And for the finishing touch, a bit of oatmeal smeared on my chin. I was a masterpiece of defeat. Claudia and Brandon sat at the dining table, my dining table, eating eggs, Benedict, and fresh fruit. They looked up when I entered, and I saw the flash of satisfaction in Claudia's eyes. Warren? She set down her fork, studying me. You look tired. I am tired. I let my shoulders slump, let my hands shake as I reached for a chair. I'm tired of fighting. I'm tired of being alone in this big house. Where's Margaret again? Brandon and Claudia exchanged a glance. The kind of glance that said, he's completely lost it. Perfect. Margaret died, Humpren. Claudia said slowly, like speaking to a child. Remember, we had the funeral. Oh, right. I rubbed my face. I forget sometimes. Everything's fuzzy. What? That's why you need help, Brandon said smoothly. Professional help. At Thornhill they can… I'll sign. I interrupted, my voice breaking. I'll sign whatever you want. Just promise me something. Let me see Dane sometimes. At Thornhill, please, he's all I have left. The tears that filled my eyes weren't entirely fake. The thought of Dane being used by these people, being taught their values, their cruelty, that was real. We'll see, she said, her smile cold and satisfied. If you're a good boy and sign everything without making a fuss, maybe we'll let you have supervised visits. Once a month, for an hour. Like I was a prisoner being granted parole. Kurt Schneider drove the black Mercedes, his eyes occasionally flicking to the rearview mirror to check on me. I sat in the back seat between Claudia and Brandon, hunched and small, staring out the window, like a confused old man watching the world go by. Claudia and Brandon spoke in low, excited whispers. After the signing, we'll announce the restructuring, Claudia murmured. Cut the R&D department by 40%. Sell off the non-profitable divisions. And the pension fund, Brandon asked. We'll blame the shortfall on Warren's mismanagement. By the time anyone realizes what actually happened, we'll have the money offshore and untouchable. When the Mercedes pulled up to Meridian Tower, the glass and steel skyscraper that housed Ashford Pharmaceuticals' executive offices, 28 floors of innovation ambition, and if I had anything to say about it, justice. Kurt opened my door, and I climbed out slowly, leaning on his arm like I needed the support. Employees in the lobby stopped and stared as we passed. "Is that Mr. Ashford?" someone whispered. "He looks terrible." I heard he's stepping down. Dementia. The whispers followed us to the elevator. I shuffled into conference room B, Kurt guiding me to my chair. I sat down heavily, my hands trembling as I placed them on the table. Claudia and Brandon took seats on either side of me, flanking me like guards. Gerald Foster, the board chairman, cleared his throat. "Mr. Ashford has requested this emergency board meeting to discuss the transfer of controlling interest in Ashford Pharmaceuticals to Brandon Hayes with Claudia Grant as co-CEO. Mr. Ashford, are you certain this is what you want?" I opened my mouth, but before I could speak, Claudia placed a thick folder in front of me. "We've prepared all the necessary documents," she said smoothly. "Transfer of shares, reallocation of voting rights, trust fund access authorization. Warren's attorney has reviewed everything. Isn't that right, Mr. Montgomery?" All eyes turned to Charles. He stood adjusting his tie and walked slowly to the head of the table. "I have indeed reviewed the documents Ms. Grant provided." He set his briefcase on the table with a deliberate thunk. However, I have some additional materials that I believe the board should review before any signatures are made." Claudia's smile flickered. "Additional materials. Yes." Charles opened his briefcase and pulled out a tablet, several manila folders, and a USB drive. Still materials pertaining to financial irregularities, forged documentation, and allegations of fraud that have come to light in the past 72 hours. The room went silent. Brandon's face drained of color. "What are you talking about?" I think," Charles said calmly, "that the board deserves full transparency before making a decision of this magnitude. Don't you agree?" Claudia's hand, which had been resting confidently on the table, curled into a fist. "This is ridiculous. Warren is clearly not competent to. On the contrary." My voice cut through the room like a blade. Strong. Clear. Not a tremor in sight. I sat up slowly, vertebrae by vertebrae, my spine straightening, until I was sitting tall in my chair. I reached up and removed the thick glasses I'd been wearing, cheap reading glasses from a drugstore, unnecessary part of the costume. My hands, which had been shaking moments ago, were now perfectly steady. I met Claudia's eyes and smiled. Not the vacant smile of a confused old man. The cold, predatory smile of a hunter who just watched his prey walk into the trap. "Hello, Claudia," I said, my voice carrying across the room with perfect clarity. "Hello, Brandon. So nice of you to join us for your reckoning." Claudia's face went white. Brandon's mouth opened and closed, no sound coming out. Gerald Foster's eyebrows shot up. "Warren, you're perfectly competent, Gerald. Thank you for asking." I folded my hands on the table, calm and composed. I apologize for the deception over the past few days, but I needed to be absolutely certain about what these two were planning before I acted. I turned my attention back to Claudia and Brandon, watching them realize slowly, horribly, that they'd been played. "Before I sign anything," I said pleasantly, "I think this board deserves to know exactly who they're about to hand my company to." I glanced at Charles. "Mr. Montgomery, would you please present the evidence? Let's start with the embezzlement. That seems most straightforward, don't you think?" The moment I straightened my spine and dropped the mask, I watched Claudia's face cycle through confusion, shock, and absolute terror in less than 3 seconds. It was beautiful. I stood up from my chair, not the shuffling, uncertain movement of a confused old man, but the confident rise of someone who knew exactly what he was doing. I reached down and pulled off the stained cardigan, revealing a perfectly tailored navy vest over a crisp white shirt. The burgundy tie Margaret had given me. The outfit of a man in control. The board members gasped. Gerald Foster's mouth fell open. "My apologies for the theatrics," I said, my voice carrying clearly across the room. No tremor, no weakness. But I needed everyone present before we discussed the irregularities. Gerald found his voice first. Warren, what the hell is going on? We were told you were losing my mind, suffering from dementia. I smiled coldly. Yes, that's exactly what you were told, by people who had everything to gain from you believing it. I turned to face the board. For the past 2 weeks, I've been performing a role, a grieving widower descending into cognitive decline. Very convincing, wasn't it, Claudia? She'd gone white as chalk, her hands gripping the edge of the table. You were faking every single moment. I let that sink in. The confusion, the wandering, the mismatched socks, all of it. Because I needed to know exactly what you and Brandon were planning before I acted. Charles moved to the front of the room, connecting his laptop to the projector. The screen filled with transaction logs, dates, amounts, routing numbers. Over the past 18 months, Charles began, approximately $4.7 million has been systematically transferred from Ashford Pharmaceuticals, specifically from the Employee Pension Fund, to shell companies registered in the Cayman Islands. Robert Miller. The CFO stood up so fast his chair nearly toppled. What, I should have caught this. You were bypassed. Charles said, through the use of digital authorization bearing Mr. Ashford's signature. He pulled up technical data timestamps, IP addresses. Every transaction was signed using Mr. Ashford's digital signature. However, forensic analysis shows they were created from Brandon Hayes's laptop. Every eye in the room turned to Brandon. His hand inched slowly toward the laptop bag at his feet. That's circumstantial, Brandon said, his voice tight. It proves, I said quietly, that you were forging my signature to steal from my company, from the 420 employees whose pensions you raided. The room exploded with outrage. Claudia shot to her feet. This man has been mentally unstable for months. My mother left a will stating he was no longer competent. She pulled out papers with shaking hands. The will you're referring to, I said calmly, is forged. The notary listed never notarized any such document. I stepped closer to her, my voice cold and precise. You forged your own mother's will. You fabricated medical evidence. You isolated me, starved me, tried to gaslight me into believing I was losing my mind. All to steal a company you never built. You were never my father. She hissed at me. Every time I called you Dad, I wanted to throw up. You were just the ATM that kept the lights on. The man who raised you from age 10. I finished quietly. The man who paid for your education walked you down the aisle. The man who loved you like his own blood, Brandon, who'd been silent, finally spoke. His voice was cold, controlled. You're making a mistake, Warren. I turned to face him. Tell me, Brandon Hayes, whose mistake am I making, mine or your father's? The room went silent. Every board member froze. I addressed the board. 15 years ago, I won a patent case against a researcher named Leonard Hayes. The patent was for Gamatech 9, the cancer treatment that became the foundation of this company's success. Leonard's research was flawed. I won. Fair and square. 6 months later, he took his own life. He left behind a 12-year-old son. I turned back to Brandon. A son who spent the next 15 years planning revenge, who infiltrated my family by marrying my stepdaughter, who spent 18 months embezzling from my company while positioning himself to steal everything I built. Brandon stood slowly. My father was a brilliant man, and you destroyed him. Your father, I said evenly, destroyed himself by falsifying data. I won that case because the science was on my side. You stole his life's work. Brandon's control cracked. Your father died, I said quietly, because he couldn't accept that he'd lost fairly. Do you know what I did after he died? I paid for his funeral. Anonymously. Made sure he had a proper service, a decent burial. Brandon's face contorted with confusion. You. What? Charles, I said. Show them the receipt. Charles pulled up a payment receipt dated April 2010. Cemetery services for Leonard Patrick Hayes. Paid in full by an anonymous donor through Charles Montgomery's firm. Brandon stared at the screen, his worldview visibly cracking. I pulled the USB drive from my pocket and handed it to Charles. Everything is documented. Emails, photos, timeline. Evidence that this entire scheme was premeditated over years. Brandon's eyes flickered to the exits where Officers Martinez and Davis had quietly moved to block the doors. No escape. Before we continue, I said calmly, there's one more thing the board should know. Charles, would you please explain the medical records we found? Brandon's face went completely white. No, he whispered. Oh yes, I said. Because the inheritance fraud isn't just about money. It's about biology. And I think it's time everyone learned the truth about Dane. Before I reveal who Brandon's father really is and why this 15-year revenge plan began, type the number 77 in the comments to let me know you're still here with me. This truth will change everything you thought you knew about this family drama. Just a reminder, the following story contains some fictionalized elements that may not reflect complete reality. If you'd prefer not to continue, feel free to pause the video here. When I spoke the name Leonard Hayes, Brandon's mask finally shattered. Charles, I said calmly, never taking my eyes off Brandon. Show them the birth certificate. The screen changed to a scanned document, official and undeniable. Birth certificate name, Brandon Michael Hayes. Date of birth, April 3rd, 1986. Father Leonard Patrick Hayes. Mother Susan Hayes, deceased 2008. Gerald Foster leaned forward, squinting. Leonard Hayes. Why does that name sound familiar? Because 15 years ago, I said Leonard Hayes and I were competitors in the biggest pharmaceutical patent race in modern history. The drug was Gamatech 9, a breakthrough cancer treatment. We'd both spent years developing it, both invested everything. But only one of us could file the patent first. I won. Leonard lost everything. His company collapsed within 6 months. Investors abandoned him. His research was deemed derivative in court. 3 months after the ruling, he took his own life. The room fell silent except for the projector's hum. Leonard's son was 12 years old when his father died. I looked directly at Brandon. I sent flowers to the funeral, established a small, anonymous trust fund. I thought I was being compassionate. I didn't realize I was signing my own death warrant. That child grew up with a single purpose: revenge. He spent 15 years planning, positioning himself, and when he learned I'd remarried a woman with a stepdaughter, he found his access point. Thomas Sullivan's voice was barely a whisper. My God. This entire time, I confirmed Brandon Hayes has been executing a revenge plot, conceived by a 12-year-old boy who never got the therapy he needed. Brandon shot to his feet, the chair clattering backward. His face flushed, chest heaving, 15 years of carefully controlled hatred finally erupting. You feel guilty, he snarled. You set up a trust fund that money lasted 1 year of community college, 1 year Warren, while you built a $2 billion pharmaceutical empire on the patent you stole from my father. I didn't steal. You had better lawyers, faster approvals. You strangled him with legal fees until he couldn't breathe. And when he was broken, when he'd lost everything, you sent a job offer. Like he was some failure you'd graciously rehabilitate. His voice cracked raw with pain. My father was a brilliant scientist. He dedicated his life to saving people, and you crushed him. Not because you were smarter, because you were richer. I kept my voice level. Your father's death was a tragedy, but I didn't force him to. Don't. Brandon's hand slammed the table. Don't you dare finish that sentence. I was 12 years old. I found him in the garage. He left a note. He pulled out his phone with shaking hands, displaying a photo of a yellowed letter. Do you want to know what it said? It said, Brandon, I'm sorry. I can't fight anymore. Men like Warren Ashford always win. But promise me you'll be stronger than I was. Promise me you'll make things right. He looked up at me, tears streaming down his face. See, Dad, I kept my promise. The silence that followed was suffocating. I took a careful breath. You targeted Claudia. Of course I did. Brandon wiped his face roughly. 5 years ago, I learned Warren Ashford had remarried a woman with a stepdaughter. A daughter with expensive tastes and flexible morals. Perfect. Claudia made a strangled sound. You used me. Brandon turned to her, his expression empty and cold. Did you think I loved you? You're vapid, greedy, and cruel. But you had access. That's all I needed. I said what you wanted to hear. I played the devoted husband, helped you embezzle forged documents. I let you think it was your plan when it was mine all along. Once Warren signed today, I'd take the $75 million payoff Russo and disappear. You'd be left holding all the evidence while I started a new life in São Paulo. You'd go to prison for helping destroy the man who destroyed my father. Claudia's face cycled through disbelief, shock, and finally fury. You bastard, I trusted you, I married you. You married a trust fund, Brandon said flatly. I married an access card. We both got what we thought we wanted. I watched Claudia realize she'd been as much a pawn as anyone else. The woman who'd spent 2 weeks gaslighting me had just discovered she'd been manipulated for 12 years. The irony was almost poetic. Brandon. My voice cut through Claudia's sobbing. I understand your pain. But what you've done here, you didn't just target me. You stole the pension fund from 420 employees, people with families, mortgages, children in college. You forged documents, committed fraud, and tried to have me committed to a psychiatric facility where I'd be drugged into compliance and silenced forever. Some collateral damage, Brandon said coldly. Like my father. No. Your father's death was a tragedy that emerged from business competition. What you've done is premeditated cruelty. You turned yourself into a monster to fight a monster you imagined I was. You're no hero here, Warren. And neither are you. I turned to face the board. I competed with Leonard Hayes fairly. I won through better preparation, better legal counsel, better execution. Was I ruthless? Nasa. Did I profit from his collapse? Absolutely. Could I have done more to help his family? Probably. But I don't deserve this. And these employees certainly don't deserve to have their retirement stolen because of a grudge that has nothing to do with them. Brandon's jaw clenched. My father was worth more than your employees' pensions. Your father, I said quietly, would be horrified by what you've become. For just a moment, Brandon flinched. Then his face hardened again. You don't get to speak about my father. Charles stood, clearing his throat. With Mr. Ashford's permission, I contacted the district attorney's office yesterday evening. Officers are waiting outside on charges of embezzlement, fraud, forgery, identity theft, and conspiracy to commit false imprisonment. The conference room doors opened. Officers Martinez and Davis stepped inside, holding up their badges. Brandon Hayes, Claudia Grant, you're under arrest. As the handcuffs clicked, Brandon locked eyes with me. My father's ghost won't rest until you're as broken as he was. I shook my head slowly. Your father's ghost doesn't want revenge, Brandon. He wanted his son back. But you killed that boy 15 years ago when you chose hatred over healing. As the handcuffs clicked shut around Brandon's wrists, Claudia did what cornered animals do best. She unleashed every drop of venom she had left. Officer Martinez's voice was professional and calm. Brandon Hayes, you're under arrest for embezzlement, wire fraud, conspiracy to commit fraud, and identity theft. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. Brandon didn't resist. He stood perfectly still as the officer secured the handcuffs, his eyes locked on mine. His face was empty of expression, no rage, no fear, no remorse, just calculation. Even now, even as his 15-year revenge plot collapsed around him, he was planning. Thinking about lawyers, appeals, technicalities, ways to minimize damage and survive. It was almost impressive. Officer Davis approached Claudia, badge held up. Claudia Grant, you're also under arrest for... Don't touch me, Claudia shrieked, backing against the wall, her perfectly styled hair coming loose, mascara already smeared. This is insane. I didn't do anything. He's the one who manipulated me. Forged everything. I'm the victim here. Brandon's head turned slowly, his expression shifting to bitter amusement. Are you serious right now? You used me, made me think we were partners, but you were planning to abandon me. Everything was your idea. Brandon laughed, actually laughed, a sharp, humorless sound that echoed in the silent conference room. Whose idea was it to fire the housekeeper without severance? Whose idea to starve Warren, humiliate him, isolate him? Whose idea was Operation Thornhill? He turned to Officer Martinez. Check her laptop. There's a folder labeled Operation Thornhill with her detailed notes on how to fabricate dementia symptoms and which psychiatric staff could be bribed. Claudia's face went from red to white in seconds. You bastard! She lunged at him, but Officer Davis caught her arms, restraining her with practiced efficiency. Careful, Brandon said mildly. That's assault on a person in custody. They add years for that. Claudia whirled on me, her face contorted with rage and desperation, all pretense of dignity abandoned. You think you've won. You think you're the hero. Let me tell you about your precious Margaret. She hated you. Warren, every day of that marriage was a performance. She told me herself. I married him for stability, stayed for money. You were just a walking bank account. The words hit like physical blows. I felt them land, felt the doubt they were designed to create. But I'd read the journal, seen Margaret's handwriting, her truth, the complexity of what we'd had. Your mother loved me, I said quietly. In the beginning, that was real. Then you poisoned her. You turned your own mother into a criminal, and when she tried to stop you at the end, you were too far gone to see it. Claudia's face twisted into something ugly. She was weak, ready to ruin everything because of guilt and conscience. I'm glad she died before she could betray me. The room went silent. Even Brandon looked shocked. I stepped closer, my voice dropping to something cold and final. You just convicted yourself from your own mouth. Officers, you heard that an admission that she viewed her mother's death as convenient for her criminal plans. Officer Martinez nodded grimly. We heard Mr. Ashford. Claudia seemed to realize her mistake. Her eyes went wide, panicked, and she lunged toward me, hands reaching. I should have let Patricia keep you drugged at Thornhill. You should have been left brain damaged rather than beat me. The officers grabbed her, pulling her back as she thrashed in their grip. Even as they secured the handcuffs, even as they began leading her toward the door, she kept screaming. And you know what's the funniest thing? Mom's death. That was the best thing that ever happened to her. She didn't have to look at your pathetic, delusional face anymore. Didn't have to pretend she actually loved you. I didn't flinch. Didn't react. Just watched as the woman I'd raised from age 10 revealed the absolute emptiness where her heart should have been. Mom was right about one thing. Claudia continued, her voice breaking with rage as the officers led her toward the door. You're nothing, Warren. A pathetic old man who couldn't keep his wife's loyalty. Your company will collapse without me. Dane will hate you for taking his mother away. You'll die alone, forgotten, just like you deserve. The door swung open. The officers led her into the hallway, her screams echoing off the walls. I hope you rot, old man. I hope every night you remember that nobody loved you, nobody ever. The door closed. The screaming faded. The conference room returned to stunned silence. I turned back to face the board members, my hands shaking not from fear, but from the adrenaline crash of 2 weeks of planning, 3 days of performance, and 1 brutal morning of confrontation. Gerald Foster looked like he'd aged a decade. Warren, we had no idea. If we'd known, I raised a hand, cutting him off gently. It's done, but we have business to finish. I pulled a document from my briefcase. Article 14 of the Ashford Family Trust states that any beneficiary convicted of criminal conduct against the company or its founder shall be immediately and irrevocably disinherited. Claudia Grant is hereby removed from all inheritance rights, trust access, and company affiliation. Brandon Hayes, who was never a legitimate heir, is similarly barred. I picked up my Montblanc pen, the same pen I'd used to sign the Gammatech 9 patent 15 years ago, and signed with a flourish. Charles, file this with probate court immediately. Already electronically filed the moment the arrests began. Charles confirmed. Gerald cleared his throat. Warren, what about the company who's going to... I'm getting to that. I'm 62 years old. I've spent 32 years building Ashford Pharmaceuticals. I plan to retire at 70, transition leadership to family. But blood doesn't make family. Loyalty does. Integrity does. I gestured toward the door. Isaac, come in. The door opened. Isaac stepped inside, looking nervous in his tailored navy suit. He'd been waiting in the anteroom per my instructions, listening through the intercom so he'd understand the full context. This is Isaac Warren, I said to the board. No blood relation, but in every way that matters, he's the son I should have had. For the past 8 years, Isaac has served as my executive assistant. He understands this company better than anyone. He's brilliant, ethical, and loyal. He's the one who helped me uncover the embezzlement, who risked his career to break into our servers, who stood by me when he had every reason to walk away. Effective immediately, Isaac Warren is your new CEO. The murmurs around the table were immediate. Gerald leaned forward. Warren, are you sure this is very sudden? I'll remain as chairman for the next 5 years to ensure smooth transition. But Isaac will run day-to-day operations. I trust him. After what just happened, trust is the only currency I value. Chun, I turned to Isaac, who looked like he might cry. Isaac, I'm offering you the position of Chief Executive Officer of Ashford Pharmaceuticals. Will you accept? Isaac's voice was thick with emotion. Sir, I don't know what to say. I smiled, the first genuine smile I'd managed in 2 weeks. Say yes, son. Isaac straightened his shoulders. Yes. Absolutely yes. The board applauded, hesitant at first, then with growing enthusiasm. When I returned to the manor that afternoon, Dane was sitting on the front steps with a small suitcase, and my heart shattered into 1,000 pieces. The house felt different, emptier, colder. Kurt was gone, arrested as an accessory for accepting bribes. The other security personnel Claudia had hired were being investigated. The staff I'd trusted for years were being called back, but they hadn't arrived yet. So Ashford Manor stood silent except for the sound of my footsteps echoing on the marble floors. And there on the front steps in the afternoon sunlight sat Dane. He'd packed himself. His little Paw Patrol suitcase sat closed beside him. In his arms, he clutched his stuffed elephant, the gray one with floppy ears that Margaret had given him when he was 3. His eyes were red and swollen from crying. When he saw me, he stood up small and uncertain, and my chest constricted so tightly I could barely breathe. Grandpa Warren. His voice was tiny, scared. Are you going to send me away too? I dropped my briefcase, not caring that it fell on its side, papers sliding out. I knelt down on the steps until I was eye level with him. Why would I send you away? My voice came out hoarse. Because Mom and Brandon left. The lady with the badge said they won't be back for a long time. She said I have to live with someone else now. He looked down at his light-up sneakers, now scuffed and dirty. Is it you or someone I don't know? His voice broke on those last words, and something in me broke with it. You're staying with me, Dane, for as long as you want, maybe forever if you'll have me. He buried his face against my shoulder and sobbed. Not the quiet tears of a child trying to be brave, the raw, ugly crying of someone who'd been holding it together all day and finally felt safe enough to fall apart. I held him right there on the front steps and let him cry. Let him soak my shirt with tears and grief. Let him squeeze my neck so tight it hurt, and I whispered the promises I should have made years ago. I've got you. You're safe. You're loved. I'm not going anywhere. Inside, Charles was waiting in my study, along with Rebecca Torres from Child Protective Services. She was in her early 40s, wearing practical slacks and a blazer with a manila folder under her arm. Mr. Ashford, I've reviewed the circumstances. Everything checks out. Emergency custody has been granted given that you're the closest stable relative and both parents are facing felony charges. She sat down, pulling out papers. I need to ask, are you prepared to care for a 6-year-old child full-time? You're 62, recently widowed, and you've just been through significant trauma. This isn't a small commitment. Ms. Torres, I've been caring for Dane since the day he was born. I taught him to ride a bike, read him bedtime stories, took him to his first day of kindergarten because Claudia was too busy shopping. The only difference now is that it's official. Rebecca's expression softened. I can see the attachment. But understand, this is raising a child who's just experienced trauma. His mother is facing 10 to 15 years in prison. He'll need therapy, stability, patience. So I understand. Dane isn't a burden. He's a blessing. The only light left in this dark house. Rebecca studied me for a long moment, then nodded. Then I'm approving temporary custody. We'll review in 6 months for permanent guardianship. My throat tightened. How quickly can we make it permanent? Charles answered. If Claudia signs away her parental rights, and she will for a plea deal, adoption can be finalized in 60 to 90 days. Then do it. Start the process immediately. After Rebecca left, I took Dane up to his bedroom, the one with the race car bed and glow-in-the-dark stars on the ceiling that we'd stuck up together one summer evening. We sat on the edge of the bed. Grandpa, why did the police take Mom? How do you explain embezzlement to a 6-year-old? How do you tell a child that his mother chose greed over him? Your mom and Brandon made some very bad choices, buddy. They took things that didn't belong to them, hurt people. When grown-ups hurt people, they have to go to a place called prison to think about what they did. Did they hurt you? His eyes were too knowing for someone so young. I hesitated, then decided on honesty. Yes, they did. I'm sorry, Grandpa. It's not your fault, buddy. None of this is your fault. You're a good kid. The best kid. He was quiet for a moment, processing. Then, are you going to be my dad now? My throat closed up completely. I had to swallow 3 times before I could speak. I can't replace your father, Dane, but I can be your grandfather who takes care of you every single day, makes breakfast, drives you to school, teaches you things, hugs you when you're sad. Would that be okay? He thought about it, his face scrunched up in concentration. Then he nodded. We still go fishing, right? You promised we'd go fishing this summer. A laugh bubbled up mixed with tears I didn't bother hiding. We'll go fishing every summer. I promise. Okay, then you can be my grandpa dad. Grandpa Dad. I smiled through the tears. I like that name. Later, as the sun began to set, I took Dane out to the garden. To the spot where Walter's Hope Rose bush had once stood before Claudia had it torn out. I'd bought a new Hope Rose that morning, red blooms, hardy, resilient. What are we planting, Grandpa? Dane knelt beside me in the soft earth. A new beginning. This is a Hope Rose. It'll bloom every spring, no matter how cold the winter gets. Like us. He looked up at me with those wide, trusting eyes. Exactly like us, buddy. We worked together, digging the hole, placing the rose bush, filling in the soil. His small hands helped pat down the earth, while I held the plant steady. Grandpa Dad. Yeah, I love you. I pulled him into my lap there in the garden dirt. I love you too, Dane. More than you'll ever know. 3 weeks after the arrests, I stood in my study reading Margaret's journal one last time, before locking it away forever. The journal sat on my desk, brown leather worn smooth by Margaret's hands, filled with her careful handwriting. The story of our marriage written in 3 acts: love, corruption, repentance. I'd read it cover to cover 3 times now. Each reading revealed something new, a detail I'd missed, a nuance I hadn't understood. But this would be the last time. My phone rang. Charles. Warren, the sentencing came through this morning. Claudia pleaded guilty to embezzlement and fraud. 12 years eligible for parole after 8. She signed away her parental rights as part of the plea deal. I felt nothing. Not satisfaction, not anger, just an empty kind of finality. And Brandon, 15 years. He refused the plea deal, went to trial, and lost spectacularly. Jury took 40 minutes to convict. His lawyer tried the tragic childhood defense. But when the prosecution presented his 15-year revenge journal with detailed plans to bring down Warren Ashford, the sympathy evaporated completely. 15 years. Brandon would be 53 when he got out. A lifetime wasted on hatred. What about Thornhill? Federal investigation launched. Turns out nurse Patricia Hale was running a scheme accepting bribes from families to keep patients drugged and compliant indefinitely. She's facing 20 years. The hospital's being shut down. I closed my eyes. I'd been so close to ending up there. Drugged, silenced, erased. Isaac's first month as CEO had been rough, board members skeptical about his age, competitors circling like sharks. But when he presented the Q3 forecast, showing 12% growth despite the scandal, the doubters went quiet. I visited the office twice a week now, mostly to advise. One afternoon, I found him buried under reports, looking overwhelmed. Having regrets? I asked from the doorway. He looked up, dark circles under his eyes. Every day. But then I remember you trusted me when nobody else did, including myself. So I can't give up. I smiled. You're doing great, Isaac. Better than I did at your age. I built this company with ambition and ruthlessness, but I forgot to build it with heart. You have both. That's why it'll thrive under you. Helen Crawford returned that Monday. I met her at the door personally. Mr. Ashford, I heard what happened. I'm so sorry they treated you that way. I shook my head. Helen, I owe you an apology. You worked 18 years loyally. When they fired you, I didn't stop them. I was playing a role, but that doesn't excuse it. I'm giving you your job back, with back pay for the 3 weeks, plus a $25,000 bonus for the trouble. Her eyes filled with tears. This house always felt like home because of you, Mr. Ashford. Not because of her. Walter Thompson returned the next day. I found him in the garden already trimming the hedges. Walter, you don't start until tomorrow. He waved me off. These hedges look terrible. Someone's got to fix them. He nodded toward the new Hope Rose. That rose we planted is taking root nicely. Should bloom by next spring. Good, I said. We could use some hope around here. Dr. Sarah Campbell's office wasn't what I expected. No couch, no notepad, just two comfortable armchairs and tissues. "Warren, you've experienced significant trauma," she said in our third session. "Betrayal by people you trusted, grief over your wife discovering your marriage was built on unstable foundations. How are you processing it?" I stared at my hands. "I don't know if I can trust anyone anymore. Margaret loved me in the first 3 years, it was real. Then everything changed. Or maybe she just revealed who she'd always been. I'll never know which is true. Does it matter? Yes. No, I don't know." "Warren, you're trying to solve a puzzle that has no answer. Margaret was a human being. Human beings are contradictions. She loved you and betrayed you, was kind and selfish, tried to save you and almost destroyed you. All of it can be true at once. How do I move forward with that? By accepting that endings don't always come in neat packages. Focus on what you can control, becoming the father Dane needs, the leader your company needs, and the person you need to be." It wasn't the answer I wanted, but it was the answer I needed. Dane had nightmares the first 2 weeks, waking up screaming for his mother. But gradually, things improved. Week 3, he laughed at breakfast when I accidentally flipped a pancake onto my head. Week 4, he asked if a school friend could come over. Week 5, he drew a new family picture, just him and me, standing in front of the manor, holding fishing rods. The sun was shining. "Do you like it, Grandpa Dad?" I hung it on the refrigerator. "It's perfect, buddy." Late one evening, I stood in my study with Margaret's journal in my hands. Inside it, confessions, lies, regrets. A map of how love could turn to greed and then back to love. I could keep it, read it, when I felt doubtful, use it to justify my anger. Or I could let go. I opened the journal one last time to the final page where Margaret's shakiest handwriting read, "Forgive me if you can." "Wonto," I whispered to the empty room. "I'm trying, Margaret. I'm trying." I walked to the fireplace and held the journal over the flames. "You loved me. You betrayed me. You tried to save me at the end. I choose to remember all of it, the good, the bad, and the broken, but I won't let it define the rest of my life." I dropped the journal into the fire. The flames caught immediately, pages curling, ink running, leather crackling. I watched it burn until there was nothing left but ash. The past couldn't be rewritten, but the future was still blank pages. And for the first time in 3 months, I felt that was a gift. The next morning, Dane and I drove to the lake with fishing rods, sandwiches, and hot chocolate. As we sat on the dock lines in the water, Dane leaned against me with a contented sigh. "This is nice, Grandpa Dad." "Yeah, it really is." A fish tugged on his line. His eyes went wide. "I got one." He reeled it in small arms, straining face scrunched in concentration. The fish broke the surface, a decent-sized base silver in the morning sun. "I did it, I caught a fish." I helped him land it, showed him how to hold it for a photo, then released it back into the water. "Why'd we let it go?" Dane asked. "Because we catch them, appreciate them, let them go home to their families." He thought about that, like how you let me stay, even though I'm not really your grandson. My throat tightened. "Dane, you are my grandson. DNA doesn't make family. Love does. And I love you more than anything in this world." He hugged me tight. "I love you too." As we packed up, I realized I'd spent 32 years building an empire, proving my worth, chasing success. But this moment with a 6-year-old who'd chosen to love me, this was the legacy that actually mattered. Not the patents or profits. This. Family. Chosen, fought for, built one moment at a time. The morning Warren woke to finalize Dane's adoption. He stood in front of his bedroom mirror for 10 full minutes, debating whether to wear a tie. "It's a courtroom," he muttered to his reflection. "You should wear a tie." But then he remembered the way Dane had looked at him 3 nights earlier, curled up on the sofa, asking in that small, careful voice children use when they're afraid of the answer, "Grandpa, what if the judge says no?" Warren had knelt beside him, then brushing a hand through the boy's dark hair. "Then we'll try again, and again, and again, until they understand that you and I are a team now. Forever." Dane had smiled in the real way that reached his eyes and whispered, "Forever sounds good." So Warren left the tie off. This wasn't a board meeting. This wasn't a negotiation. This was about a 6.5-year-old boy who'd already lost too much, and an old man who'd been given one last chance to build something that mattered. He found Dane in the kitchen, already dressed in the navy blue sweater and khaki pants they'd picked out together. Helen Crawford was making pancakes. "Morning, champ," Warren said. Dane looked up his face, a mixture of excitement and nerves. "Is today the day?" "Today's the day. And after we get ice cream," Warren grinned. "Double scoops?" "I promised, didn't I?" Helen squeezed Warren's shoulder as she passed. "You're both going to be just fine." Maplewood Springs Family Court was a modest building with wide windows and pale oak benches that smelled faintly of lemon polish. It was nothing like the corporate towers Warren had spent decades conquering, and somehow that made it feel more important. They arrived 15 minutes early. Charles Montgomery was already waiting with a leather portfolio and a reassuring nod. "Everything's in order. Rebecca Torres filed her final report yesterday. It's glowing." Warren exhaled. "Thank you, Charles, for everything." Dane tugged on Warren's sleeve. "Mr. Charles, do I have to talk?" Charles crouched to the boy's eye level. "Only if you want to, Dane. The judge might ask you a question or two, but you can say as much or as little as you like. This is your day." Dane nodded, and Warren saw the boy's hand slip into his. Small, trusting. They were called into the courtroom at exactly 10 a.m. Judge Patricia Morrison was a woman in her early 60s with silver-streaked hair and kind eyes. She sat behind the bench, and when she looked up, her gaze softened. "Good morning, Mr. Ashford, and you must be Dane." Dane nodded, suddenly shy. "Well," Judge Morrison said, "this is one of my favorite kinds of hearings. Let's get started, shall we?" Rebecca Torres stood first. "Your Honor, I've completed 6 months of home visits, interviews, and assessments. I've observed Mr. Ashford and Dane in their home environment on 8 separate occasions. I've spoken with Dane's teachers, his therapist, and several family friends." Judge Morrison leaned forward. "And your recommendation?" "I recommend the court grant this adoption without reservation. In all my years as a caseworker, I have rarely seen a home environment as stable, loving, and supportive. Dane has flourished in his care. He's attending school regularly, participating in activities, and most importantly, he feels safe." Warren felt his chest tighten. He glanced at Dane, who was sitting beside him, swinging his legs and staring at his shoes. Judge Morrison turned to Warren. "Mr. Ashford, you've petitioned to adopt your step-grandson as your legal son. Can you tell me in your own words why you want to do this?" Warren stood. For a man who had given hundreds of speeches and negotiated billion-dollar deals, this felt like the hardest question he'd ever been asked. "Your Honor, 6 months ago I thought I'd lost everything. My wife had died. My family had turned on me. I was alone in a house that no longer felt like a home." He paused, glancing down at Dane. "And then this boy, this brave, beautiful boy, looked at me and said, 'Grandpa, can I stay?' And I realized I hadn't lost everything. I'd been given a second chance." Judge Morrison's eyes softened further. Warren continued. "I'm 62 years old. I've built companies, won wars, made fortunes. But none of that matters compared to what Dane has given me. He's given me purpose. He's given me hope. He's given me a reason to be better than I was." His voice cracked slightly. "I'm not asking the court to let me adopt Dane because I think I'm the perfect father. I'm not. I'm learning. But I promise you this, I will show up for him every single day. I will be there for homework and nightmares and first days of school and scraped knees and every moment in between. Because that's what family does. Not because of blood, but because of choice. And I choose him. Every single day. Judge Morrison nodded slowly. Thank you, Mr. Ashford. Then she turned to Dane. Young man, do you want Warren Ashford to become your legal father? The courtroom went still. Dane looked up at Warren, his brown eyes wide and serious. Then he looked at the judge and nodded. Can you tell me why? Dane hesitated. Then, in a voice so small it was almost a whisper, he said, Because he makes me feel like I belong. Warren felt tears prick his eyes. And do you feel safe with him? Dane nodded firmly. Yes. He reads me stories, and he lets me help in the garden, and he promised we'd go fishing every summer. And he never yells. And Dane paused, then added in a rush, and he loves me. I know he does. Warren's throat closed completely. Judge Morrison smiled, really smiled. Well, Dane, I think that's all I need to hear. After reviewing the case file, the recommendation from Child Protective Services, and hearing testimony from both parties, I find that this adoption is in the best interest of the child. Therefore, I hereby grant the petition. As of this moment, Dane Grant is now legally Dane Ashford. The gavel came down with a soft, final crack. Dane launched himself into Warren's arms, nearly knocking him over. Warren caught him holding him tight, and for the first time in 6 months, he let himself cry. We did it, Dane whispered. We did it, Warren echoed. That night, after the ice cream and celebratory dinner, Warren tucked Dane into bed. Grandpa, Dane said sleepily. Yeah, champ. Can we still call you Grandpa Dad? Warren smiled, brushing the hair back from the boy's forehead. You can call me whatever you want, as long as you know I'm here. Always. Dane's eyes fluttered closed. I know. Warren stayed there, watching the rise and fall of the boy's chest. For the first time since Margaret's death, Warren felt like he'd come home. Not to a house, not to a company, but to a family, one he'd chosen, one that had chosen him back, and that he realized was the only empire that had ever truly mattered. 1 year after the arrests, I stood in the garden watching Dane chase fireflies, and I finally understood what Margaret meant when she said, "Save Dane." She wasn't just asking me to protect him. She was asking me to save myself. If you'd told me a year ago that I'd be standing here in the very garden where I nearly lost everything watching my son chase fireflies on a warm August evening, I wouldn't have believed you. A year ago, I was drowning. Betrayed by my wife, my stepdaughter, my son-in-law. I'd lost my company, my dignity, and my will to fight. I was 62 years old and ready to surrender. But then I remembered something my mentor told me when I was 30, building my first pharmaceutical lab from nothing. Warren, empires fall. Legacies fade. But the people you love, they're the only thing that outlasts you. I didn't understand it then. I do now. So what happened to everyone? Claudia is at Riverside Women's Correctional, up for parole in 7 years. I received a letter from her 3 months ago. She wrote, I'm sorry. I don't expect forgiveness, but please tell Dane his mother loves him. I read it to Dane. The boy thought for a moment, then said, Tell Mom I hope she learns to be kinder. The honesty of children. Brandon is in federal prison. 15 years no parole for the first 12. I heard through Charles that he's teaching other inmates pharmaceutical chemistry. Maybe he'll find redemption. Maybe not. That's not my burden to carry anymore. Ashford Pharmaceuticals thriving. Isaac Warren, my CEO, my son in every way except blood, just signed a partnership with Mayo Clinic for cancer research. The same research that began with Gammatech 9, the drug that ended Leonard Hayes' life. Ironic, isn't it? But this time profits go to a charitable foundation. We named it The Leonard Hayes Memorial Fund for Pharmaceutical Ethics. Brandon will never know, but maybe his father's soul can finally rest. And me, I'm stepping down as chairman next month. I'll stay on as an advisor, but my main job now is being dad. Turns out I'm pretty good at it. Last week, Dane and I visited Margaret's grave. It was his idea. "Why do you want to go?" I asked. "Because she was my grandmother, and you said she tried to save you at the end. I want to say thank you." So we went. Dane placed flowers on the headstone roses from the garden Walter Thompson replanted. I stood there looking at the name carved in marble. Margaret Elizabeth Grant Ashford, 1967 to 2024. Finally, I spoke the words I'd been holding for a year. "I forgive you, Margaret. Not because you deserve it, but because holding on to anger was killing me. You loved me. You betrayed me. You tried to save me. All of it was real. I accept that I'll never know which part weighed more. But thank you for your final gift, Dane. You asked me to save him. Turns out he saved me." Dane slipped his hand into mine. "Do you think she heard you?" "I don't know, champ, but I hope so." When we walked away, I felt lighter. Not healed, I don't know if you ever fully heal from betrayal that deep. But lighter. And that's enough. Tonight after dinner, I'm getting better at cooking, only ordered takeout 3 times this week. Dane and I sat on the porch, watching fireflies. Dad, he calls me Dad now, not Grandpa. Still makes my heart skip. "Yeah, buddy. At school, Tommy said you're not my real dad because you didn't make me." Is that true? I set down my lemonade. Here it was, the conversation I'd been dreading and preparing for. Well, Tommy's half right. I didn't make you biologically. Your mother and birth father did. But you know what makes a real father. What? Being there. Being there when you're scared, teaching you things, loving you even on days when you're cranky and don't want to do homework. That's what makes a father real. And I'm here every single day. Dane considered this. So you're my real dad, and I had a birth dad, but he's not here anymore. Exactly. Well, I like you better. You make better pancakes. I laughed so hard I almost spilled my lemonade. I love you, champ. Love you too, Dad. Just like that, the conversation was over. Children have a way of cutting through complexity to find simple truth. Love is a choice, and we choose each other every day. Before I end this story, I want to say something to you. If you're watching this, wherever you are, you might be facing your own betrayals, your own Claudias and Brandons. Maybe your family isn't what you thought. Maybe the people you trusted most let you down. I won't lie and say it doesn't hurt. It does. It hurts like hell. But here's what I learned. You get to choose your family. Blood doesn't require love, and love doesn't require blood. The people who show up, who stay when things get hard, who fight for you, who see your worth when you can't, those are your family. I lost a wife, a stepdaughter, and a son-in-law. But I gained a son, a CEO, who's like a son, a lawyer, who's like a brother, and household staff, who feel like extended family. I built a billion-dollar pharmaceutical empire. But the thing I'm most proud of, a 7-year-old boy who knows he's loved unconditionally, that's legacy. Not the buildings with your name on them, not the patents or stock prices, but the people whose lives changed because you refused to give up on them. So here's my question for you. Would you give Claudia a second chance? Would you forgive Margaret? Would you adopt a child not related by blood when you could easily walk away? I don't know if I made the right choices, but they were my choices, and I can live with them. Actually, no, I can thrive with them. Dad, loom catch fireflies with me, I got the jar. Dane's voice rang out from the yard, bright and full of joy. I stood, my knees creaking but my heart full. Coming, son. As I walked toward him, I thought, you know what's amazing about being 63? I finally stopped caring about building empires and started caring about building moments. This moment right now, chasing fireflies with my son on a warm August night, is worth more than every patent, every merger, every dollar I ever made. Margaret asked me to save Dane, but the truth, the boy saved me. Got one. Dane held up the jar, the firefly glowing inside. Make a wish, I told him. Then let it go. The boy closed his eyes, whispered something, then opened the jar. The firefly circled once, then shot upward into the darkening sky, joining a constellation of living lights. What did you wish for? That we'll be together forever, like a real family. I pulled him close. Champ, we are a real family, and that's not a wish. That's a promise. As we walked inside, my son's hand gripping mine, fireflies dancing around us. I looked up at the stars and whispered one last thing to Margaret. We're okay, both of us, finally okay. And we were. If I could speak to my younger self, the man who built empires but forgot to build a home, I'd say this: don't be like me. Don't wait until you've lost everything to realize what truly matters. I spent 32 years chasing power, believing success was measured in patents and profit margins. But God had other plans. He allowed me to be stripped bare so I could finally see the truth. Family drama isn't just about who betrays you. It's about who you become in the aftermath. When Margaret whispered those final words, when Claudia's husband's revenge plot unraveled, when Brandon's 15-year scheme came to light, I learned that God doesn't give us the families we want. He gives us the ones we need to grow. The husband revenge that Brandon orchestrated wasn't just about destroying me. It was about avenging his father, and that hatred consumed him while I found redemption through choosing love. Here's my lesson. Blood doesn't guarantee love, loyalty does. The family drama that nearly destroyed me also saved me, because it forced me to choose Dane, to choose presence over pride. Don't let husband revenge or family drama steal your decades before you realize that God has been whispering the same truth. The people who stay, that's your family. In my opinion, forgiveness isn't weakness. It's freedom. Legacy isn't what you leave behind. It's who you lift up. If this story moved you, comment below and hit subscribe for more stories. Thank you for staying until the end. Please note that upcoming stories contain fictionalized elements for educational purposes. Choose what serves your growth.